With the finale getting closer, it's starting to feel like Outlander is building towards something much bigger than just a goodbye. There's this quiet tension in the story right now, like every small moment is leading to one massive reveal. And honestly, when you look at all the hints the show has been dropping, it's hard to ignore one possibility: Henry and Julia are not done yet. In fact, their story might be the key to everything. The last time we really focused on them, they were on the edge of time travel, stepping into something they didn't fully understand. And that's what makes this so interesting, because in Outlander, time travel is never simple. It doesn't just take you where you want to go. It takes you where you're meant to be. So if Henry and Julia had Claire on their minds in that moment, then there's a real chance they didn't just disappear, they were pulled toward her timeline. And if that's true, then the finale could give us something completely unexpected, a reunion that was never supposed to happen. Just imagine this for a second. Claire, after everything she's been through, suddenly comes face to face with her parents again. Not as memories, not as flashbacks, but real, alive, standing right in front of her. That kind of moment wouldn't just be emotional, it would change how we see her entire story. Because for so long, Claire's past has felt like something distant, something she could never go back to. But now, through time travel, that past might come crashing into her present. At the same time, this raises a much bigger question. If Henry and Julia do find Claire, then what does that mean for the timeline itself? Because every time someone interferes with the past or the future in Outlander, there are consequences. And this is where things start to connect with Jaime. His fate has always felt uncertain, especially with the way the story keeps hinting at danger around him. The Battle of King's Mountain, the constant references to history, the fear that his story might end in a way we're not ready for. But what if that outcome isn't fixed anymore? What if the timeline has already started to shift? Because if Henry and Julia's journey brings them into Claire's life again, then that's not just a reunion. That's a disruption. And in a story built on time travel, even the smallest disruption can lead to the biggest changes. So while everyone is focused on how Outlander might end, the real question might be this: are we even heading toward the ending we think we know, or has everything already changed? Now when you start looking at Jaime's story through this lens, things don't feel as certain as they once did. For a long time, it seemed like his fate was already written, especially with all the historical events pointing toward the Battle of King's Mountain. The show has reminded us again and again that this battle is dangerous, that it could be the moment where everything falls apart. And honestly, the way it's being built up makes it feel like we're supposed to expect the worst. But at the same time, Outlander has never been a story that simply follows history without questioning it. It bends the rules. It plays with time. And sometimes it completely changes what we think is inevitable. That's where things get really interesting. Because if the timeline has already been affected, whether it was Claire saving lives she wasn't meant to save, or Henry and Julia possibly entering a different time, then Jaime's fate might not be locked in anymore. What if the version of history we've been fearing is no longer the one we're heading toward? And if that's true, then the finale might not be about losing Jaime, it might be about saving him in a way we didn't see coming. There's also something else to think about here. Jaime and Claire's connection has always been at the center of everything, and it's never felt limited by time. No matter what happens, they always find their way back to each other. So if the story is pushing us to believe that Jaime could die, it almost feels too obvious. Like the show wants us to focus on that fear while something even bigger is happening in the background. And that something could be tied directly to Henry and Julia. Because if Claire is reunited with her parents, even briefly, that could give her knowledge or understanding that she didn't have before. Maybe something about time travel, maybe something about changing outcomes, or maybe even a warning. And that information could be exactly what she needs to alter Jaime's fate. Not in a simple or easy way, but in a way that fits the emotional weight of the story. A moment where everything feels lost, and then suddenly it isn't. And this is why the finale feels so unpredictable right now. On the surface, it looks like we're heading toward a tragic, emotional ending. But underneath that, there's a growing sense that the story is setting up a twist, something that connects past, present, and future all at once. So instead of asking whether Jaime will survive, maybe the real question is how the story is going to change the rules to make that possible. At the same time, Henry and Julia's story might not be as simple as both of them reaching Claire together. And this is where the theory takes a more emotional turn, because Outlander rarely gives us something powerful without adding a layer of conflict. If they both tried to travel at the same moment, there's a strong chance something went wrong. Time travel in this world is unpredictable, and even when characters think they understand it, there's always a risk. So instead of a perfect reunion, we could be looking at a separation, one that changes everything moving forward. The most likely possibility is that only one of them actually makes it through. And if that happens, Henry feels like the one who reaches Claire's timeline. It just fits the story in a way that creates both emotion and tension. Imagine Henry standing there, finally seeing his daughter again after all this time, while carrying the weight of not knowing where Julia is. That kind of scene wouldn't just be emotional, it would instantly raise the stakes. Because now, the reunion isn't complete. It's only the beginning of a much bigger problem. And for Claire, this would be overwhelming in a completely different way. She's not just reconnecting with her past, she's stepping into it. Seeing her father again could bring back memories, questions, and feelings she's kept buried for years. But at the same time, she would be faced with a new reality. Her mother is still missing, lost somewhere in time. And that creates a new goal, one that could extend beyond the finale itself. Because once Claire knows Julia is out there, she's not going to stop looking for her. This is also where the connection to the larger story becomes even stronger. If Henry ends up in Claire's timeline, then he becomes part of her present, not just her past. That means he could interact with characters like Jaime, Roger, and Brianna. And those interactions could lead to new decisions, new plans, and new risks. Especially when it comes to finding Julia. Because searching through time isn't just difficult, it's dangerous. And every attempt could create even more changes in the timeline. So instead of a simple reunion, what we might actually get is the start of a new mission. One that begins with Henry finding Claire, but quickly turns into a race against time to find Julia. And if that happens, then the finale won't just close one chapter, it will open another, filled with uncertainty, emotion, and a completely new kind of tension that carries the story forward. And this is exactly where Roger could become more important than ever in this theory. Because if anyone understands the risks and mechanics of time travel better than most characters, it's him. He's already been through enough to know that every jump through the stones comes with consequences, and nothing ever goes exactly as planned. So if Henry ends up in Claire's timeline searching for Julia, Roger could be the one person who helps turn that search into something possible instead of impossible. But the problem is, the moment you start pulling more people into time travel decisions, the risks multiply. Every attempt to fix one situation can accidentally create another. And that's what makes this theory so tense. If Henry and Roger try to go back and find Julia, they're not just chasing her through time, they're stepping deeper into a system they don't fully control. And in Outlander, that almost always leads to unexpected outcomes. Sometimes it brings people together, but other times it separates them even further. Now imagine Julia's situation on the other side of this. If she didn't make it with Henry, she could be stuck in an entirely different time, possibly even closer to danger than anyone realizes. And if she ends up in the hands of people connected to Simon Fraser, like some theories suggest, then her rescue becomes not just a mission, but a race against history itself. Because the longer she stays lost, the more complicated the timeline becomes. And that's where everything starts to overlap, Claire's past, Jaime's future, Henry's journey, and Roger's knowledge all pulling in different directions. This is also where the emotional weight of the finale starts to build. Because at this point, it's no longer just about survival or reunion. It's about whether these characters can actually correct what's been broken without breaking something else in return. And that's a dangerous balance. Every decision could either bring closure or create another layer of chaos. And Outlander has always thrived in that space where love and loss exist side by side, where every victory comes with a cost. So when you step back and look at it all together, Henry and Julia's storyline isn't just a side plot anymore. It becomes a chain reaction that could influence everything else happening in the finale. From Claire's emotional past to Jaime's uncertain future, every thread starts to connect in ways that feel bigger than expected. And that's why this theory doesn't just change one storyline, it changes the entire direction of how the ending could unfold. So when everything is pulled together, the Outlander finale starts to feel less like an ending and more like a turning point for multiple timelines at once. Henry and Julia possibly finding Claire is not just a reunion idea, it becomes the trigger for everything else that follows. Because once the past starts interacting directly with the present in this way, nothing can stay exactly as it was before. Every connection becomes stronger but also more unstable. And that's where the final tension of this theory really sits. If Claire truly meets Henry again, even briefly, it could reshape her understanding of time travel in a way that changes her decisions moving forward. She has always experienced time travel as something she survives, something she adapts to. But hearing it directly from someone like Henry, who comes from her original life, could give her a completely different perspective. It might even push her toward choices that affect not only her own story, but Jaime's as well. And that brings everything back to him again, because no matter how far the story stretches, Jaime remains the emotional center of it all. At the same time, this kind of shift could explain why Jaime's fate feels so uncertain right now. If the timeline has already been influenced by multiple changes, then the future we think is coming might not exist anymore in the same way. The Battle of King's Mountain, the danger surrounding him, the constant tension building around his survival, all of it could be part of a version of history that is no longer fixed. And if that's true, then the finale isn't about watching history repeat itself, but watching it change in real time. But even with all these possibilities, one thing remains clear: Outlander rarely gives easy answers. Every emotional moment comes with complexity, and every resolution carries weight. So if Henry and Julia do reconnect with Claire, it won't simply be a happy reunion. It will be the start of something larger, something that reaches into every part of the story. It could mean hope, but it could also mean sacrifice. And the show has always balanced those two things carefully. So as the finale approaches, the real question isn't just whether Henry and Julia find Claire. It's what that discovery does to everything else connected to her life. Because if this theory is even partly true, then the ending we're expecting might not be the ending we actually get. And in a story built on time, love, and impossible choices, that uncertainty might be the most important clue of all.